And we are live. What's up, beasties? It's Triple B, your friendly neighborhood bearded book beast. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Beast Friends Forever. Woo! I'm excited for this morning's show. Thank you for joining me a little earlier than usual on a beautiful Saturday morning, at least by me. But I'm excited to have this guest on. He is the debut author of an awesome book that I cannot wait to get my hands on. You saw it in the thumbnail. It's got a beautiful cover. And we talk a lot here about fantasy, sci-fi, horror, but I also love thrillers, as you know. And this one sounds like it's going to be fantastic. So I cannot wait to pick this author's brain. And they're just a lovely person. So I'm excited to have them on so that you can get to know them and so that you can find out more about their book so that you can check it out as well. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, Salman Shaheen. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Hello there, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited to have you on, man. Thanks for agreeing to be on here across the pond from over in, are you in London or where are you at?
I am in London, across the pond. It's amazing, isn't it, what this modern newfangled technology can do, right?
I know we're so far apart, but we can just hang out and chat. It's awesome. We have somebody in the chat that left a comment. I want to shout out Mr. Tim McKay, and another awesome author and member of the Bearded Book Beast channel. Make sure you check out below for how you can sign up for the channel. But thank you for being here, Tim. I was going to say thank you for being Tim here. Thank you for being here, Tim. I appreciate it, my friend. And everyone else in the chat, whether you leave a comment or not, we appreciate you being in there and hanging out with us. And if you're watching this on replay, we appreciate you as well. Before we get going, do not forget that in the description, I've got Salman's website linked. I've got Roundfire Books website linked. And I have the book, of course, Freebourne, linked. The ebook is out currently, and the physical copy will be coming out in November. If you're in the States, if you're elsewhere, the paperback could already be available, but there it is. And look at that cover. But check out all those so that you can check out this book, because I feel like after we're done chatting, you're going to want to. So why don't we start off and just tell us in your own words. We'll dive into the book more and into your journey into becoming an author and all those things. But just in your own words, how would you pitch the book? What's your blurb for what Freeborn is about?
So in Freeborn, which starts out very much like a thriller. And it starts out, you could begin it and think, this could be Broadchurch or Midsummer Murders. But actually, it gets very much closer to the territory that you're into. It blends into Black Mirror by the end of it. And in this near future thriller set in a idyllic, small, beautiful English town in the south of England, our protagonist, Dr. Harry Colson, he's just divorced his wife, who he's found out has been having an affair with his best friend. He wants to start a new life. He needs the peace and quiet to come and think about how to start this new tech empire that he wants to set up. He's got this revolutionary new device, which I'll come to in a little bit, that he wants to establish. And he steps off the train, into Freeborne, this sleepy little town. And as soon as he steps off the train, he finds the body of a murdered woman lying in the snow. And immediately coming into this town of Freeborne, he's suspected of the murder because there's not been a murder in Freeborne in over 100 years, and he's the stranger coming into town. And that's the opening scenes essentially, but it gets a bit crazy from there. Not just, you can read it cover to cover. You can. There's a murder at the beginning. More murders happen throughout the book, and by the end, you find out who did the murder. And you could read it like a murder mystery, but there's a twist in it, and I'm pretty confident in saying it's a twist that's never been done before in fiction. I'm not going to give that away. But it gets a bit crazy, and I look forward to you coming to it.
Dude, I cannot wait. I love thrillers in general and mysteries and all that, but like this one has that little extra flair to it that, like you said, is right up my alley. And a lot of the people watching, when you mention the twist too, I love a good twist, and I'm really excited to get to that because that's kind of what I've seen when I've looked up stuff about the book and reception so far and everything. people talk about the twist. So I'm excited to hear about that. All right, so let's dive into talking about the book first. So how did you come up with this idea for the book? Was like the thriller genre kind of always what you enjoyed reading? So that's kind of the area you wanted to write in. And then how did you decide to make it a little more, I don't want to say a little more towards the fantastical a little bit? How did you come up with that idea?
So, I mean, it's sort of melding three things, really. It's melding murder mystery thriller. It's melding speculative fiction, sci-fi. I mean, we're not talking about spaceships and laser beams. We are talking about near future, plausible. Where could we be in a couple of decades tech? Yeah. And it's also melding what I would probably describe is a literary fiction title with deep philosophical themes in it. So, I mean, probably, my own inherent biases are towards, I do like thrillers, but my own inherent biases are towards reading literary fiction, the kind of fiction that makes you think. But I also love, absolutely, I'm a complete nerd. I love speculative fiction. I love the kind of things that, leave you questioning where we're going as a society, what it means for human nature, what the pace of technology is doing to us as humans and as a broader society. And I thought, there's huge scope for writing something that's both literary and speculative. Something like Kazuo Ishiguro's "Never Let Me Go," for example, where you've sort of you can talk about human nature, and you can get very philosophical about who we are, what we are, in our state of nature, and what led us to that. Was it society? Was it what we are born to be? And how does technology change that? But some years ago, I interviewed an author, a hero of mine, who sadly passed away since, back when I was literature editor of the student newspaper at Cambridge University. And I interviewed this author, Jill Patton Walsh, who's an amazing author who wrote a fantastical philosophical thriller called She wrote a fantastical philosophical novel called Knowledge of Angels, not a thriller at all, very esoteric, but she's also written murder mysteries as well. And she gave me the fantastically sage piece of advice that if you want to ask these big questions about society, about philosophy, about politics, if you want to have all these weighty themes, the best way to do so is to smuggle it in a murder mystery. So that's what I did, because people read them. People love murder mysteries. They're one of the most popular selling genres. So I did. So I wrote a murder mystery, but I just couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to just write a straight whodunit. Absolutely, you'll find out whodunit by the end of the novel, but there's something much bigger going on here. Really asking some deep questions of us, and some very dark twists and turns happen. And I just sort of love that kind of rug pull, gut punch feeling you get when you sort of get to this twist, and it sort of makes you question everything that came before. So a lot of things converged into Freebourne, and that's how it was born, essentially.
That's awesome. I love that. And this is your debut book, right? Which is fantastic. I mean, that's got to feel good. How's that feel to be an author, a published author, and it's out there, or it's coming out for in other parts of the world? But how does that feel? Because I'm sure this has been a dream and a journey in itself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been writing ever since I was a kid, in some form or other. And I've lost count of the number of pages I've written that never saw the light of day. I also was I've been a journalist for many years as well. Written for newspapers, magazines, published nonfiction essentially. But fiction was always my first love. Always kept coming back to it, and and it absolutely is a dream come true to finally, feel that book in your hands, to see that cover, and it's just a great feeling, and now that great feeling is sort of moving into a slight sense of nervousness, actually, about how people what people are going to think when they read it. Especially when they come to the twist. Is it going to have the reaction I hope it does, which is get people talking around the water cooler or on BookTok, Bookstagram or whatnot, and I hope that is how it turns out.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, we have another awesome author that just popped in here. Curran is here. Thanks for being here, Curran. And yes, it is Freebourne that we are talking about. So exciting stuff, man. I'm pumped for you. A lot of us, me included, are on that same journey of writing and wanting to become an author. So I just love to get to talk to authors who've made it and, I think I read a statistic once that said like a very small number, like less than 3% or something of people who start writing a book actually complete it and put it out there. So you're already in the minority. So you deserve a round of applause. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you very much. I mean, only the stats only get more depressing from there. I think you can read further stats that the average, traditionally published novel, like we're talking self-published novel, traditionally published novel, sells about 250 copies. It's like, and it takes years to write a novel. Let alone all the ones that don't get published that you've written.
I know
you've written before, and I've written 3 novels that never got published before. Not thrillers. They weren't commercial.
Okay.
They were somewhat less commercial and didn't go anywhere. This one is more on the commercial side of things, but it takes so long to write a novel. You're really putting yourself into it, and then to put yourself out there to sort of get so many rejection letters. I can paper the walls with the number of rejection letters I got for Freebourne before I finally got it published as well. It's a big moment getting that 3%, but then you don't even know if anyone's going to read it, even if it does get published. So my advice to writers when I'm asked this question is why write? Don't write to get published. Write because you love it.
Yes.
Write because you can't not write. Right, because you've got a story in you that you want to get out, and even if it's only your friends and family that read it, if you're enjoying doing it, do it. Don't write because you want to make any money, because you probably won't.
Right,
because you love it.
Yep. And I love that. That's beautiful advice. And do what you did and write the book that you want there to be, right? Because your book Freeborn sounds like something that you would have really enjoyed to read. So you just created it. And that's another thing that I think is important. Don't try to just look at, you got to know a little bit what's marketable, right? But at the same time, don't just chase that. Make sure you're writing a story that you would want to read yourself.
Well, that's right. And absolutely, I did write what I like to read myself. But then you raise a really good point about not writing what's marketable. It's really hard to write what's marketable, because when you're writing, it's probably about 3 years. Let's say you finish it in a year.
Totally different.
It takes about 2 years to come out, even when you've got a publishing contract. You're about 3 years behind what's being sold at the time. So you don't know what's going to be popular in 3 years. You could look at, you could have seen how well the Hunger Games are doing and gone, oh, I must write a young adult dystopian novel. And then suddenly everyone's published a young adult dystopian novel, and no one wants to buy those anymore. But I was actually very fortunate with Freeborne, because Freeborne, at the heart of Freeborne, is it questions where we're going as society and where technology is taking us. And in it, the protagonist, Harry Colson, has invented this device called Polaris, which allows you to see inside your memories. And I'm not giving anything away. This is all explained very early on. This is not the big twist, but it allows you to see inside your memories and look at the most traumatic ones. Look at what the experiences that have hurt you in some deep way. It could be recovering from the grief of a breakup or death or whatnot, and it allows you to recover from those memories after stepping inside them. Now, it allows you to heal pain, take away pain of traumatic memories, and it's an AI device that you strap to your head, and you can do that. Now, the question is essentially, what could happen to that technology if it ended up in the wrong hands? Even in the right hands, does it fundamentally change who we are as people, this AI technology, or does it fundamentally change society if we can do that to our minds? Now, I started writing this before ChatGPT was invented, and now ChatGPT is out there. GPT-5's just launched. Sam Altman, on the launch of GPT-5, said he was scared about what this technology could do. He likened it to the Manhattan Project, and said he was frightened by it, by its potential. And there is huge potential of AI technology. It's revolutionizing the way we act. It's revolutionizing the way our workplaces are efficient in ways on an order of magnitude never been seen before. But at the same time, all that efficiency in production in our workplaces has suddenly evaporated. Many jobs that we thought were secure forever. So society has changed, in some ways good, in some ways bad. And where are the guardrails? We are living in an age of a technological revolution in which technology is moving faster than the law, and there are no guardrails. So Freeborne asked the question: if technology is advancing so fast, where are the guardrails for that technology, and what it can do for us? And it was very fortuitous, because now everyone is all the reviewers are looking at Freeborne and saying, wow, he's commenting on the AI revolution. I wasn't necessarily intending to comment on Chat GPT or anything, because it didn't exist then. But I could kind of see the way things were going, and now it happens to be a hot button topic in a way that it wasn't even when I started writing. So accidentally, I ended up writing something that was touching what a lot of people are thinking in the market already.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because I was going to ask you about that, because it seems very timely, but I knew that you've been working on it for a while. So I was like, man, that either just worked out really well, or like you said, you kind of saw the writing on the wall as well. So that I knew that it had some things to do with AI, but hearing you describe the machine with the dreams and stuff, that is really inventive. So how did you come up with that idea? Was that inspired by anything else? Was it something you just kind of thought of yourself? Or how did you come up with that? Because that sounds really cool.
Well, I wanted to play with the idea of, what can fundamentally change the nature of a person, and our experiences and our good, both good and bad. Are they all? Are we a sum of our experiences? And if we could turn off the dark, what are we just looking at the light? That's a question that I wanted to raise. And you look at the way technology is changing things. Even when I started writing this, before GPT came along, we were already being the way we think was already being changed by algorithms without us knowing. You go on Facebook or Twitter, as it was then. I refuse to ever call it X, but it's still Twitter in my heart.
Yeah, same.
And you like something, and then suddenly you're served 500 more of that thing. And it could be that you happen to like a conspiracy theory or some far right narrative, and you start going down a rabbit hole, essentially. And you're only served that thing. You're bubbled by that algorithm. Over time, it begins to change the way we think. So I thought, what if AI actually could change the way we think? What if we could strap it to our head and it could alter our brains? And that was sort of the genesis of that technology.
Very cool, man. Very, very inventive. I'm excited to check this book out. So let's take a little pivot for a second and talk about that sweet cover. Hold that up again so people can see it. So I love everything about this cover. I love the color scheme. I love the typography. I love just the vibes and like the atmosphere that it sets. I feel like it fits what you described about the book. It fits it perfectly. It's got the murder mystery vibe. It's got the thriller vibe, but it's got that little extra vibe too, where it's going to go into an area that isn't just your everyday run of the mill thriller. So tell us about the cover process for you. Like, how did that all go? And was this kind of, when you were writing the book, did you picture something like this, or did it come about from like back and forth and going through the process?
So, I mean, the publisher is very accommodating. So, they asked me for my ideas of the cover based on what was in the novel. And, I always, the opening scenes are of the protagonist stepping off the train. He's walking through a wooded roads, walking along a wooded roadside, winding his way down the hill towards this sleepy little English village. It's the dead of night and it's winter. So, I kind of had this sort of image of a figure in the dark and the woods in my mind. And that's kind of classic murder mystery thriller territory. It's dark, it's dingy. But I said to the publisher, this isn't just a murder mystery. This is set in the near future. I want to bring just a tiny little hint of that sci-fi element without screaming, this is sci-fi in your face. Just give it a little hint. They came up with, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's sort of, if you look at it online, you'll see it more clearly. It's kind of this electric pink, typography. Normally they'd go with the thriller. You could imagine like blood red or something. Electric pink. Which I immediately thought, I'm really pleased you did that. What a great choice.
Yes.
They've got, you won't be able to see it too well, but they've got this sort of like, almost a glitch in the Matrix going.
Yes.
And I just wanted to get across the idea that this is quite mind bending, and I've got a quote from a journalist at the Telegraph on the front cover that says, "Midsummer Murders meets the Matrix." Yes, and that's the publisher would have read that and thought, okay, we'll try our best to mix up Midsummer Murders and the Matrix.
That is a cool mix in that quote. I saw that and I was like, oh heck yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, the cover is awesome, and I think, like you said, those little details really just make it fit the story so well. So well done. And plus, I will say, I call covers like yours a scroll stopper. When people are scrolling, looking at through like Amazon or something, like they see that cover, they're gonna stop and be like, "Oh, what's this?" And then yeah, so well done. I think that cover is awesome.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I'm not the artist. I still draw stick men, you know. So well done to the publisher for coming up with
Put your input
working out
in.
what was in my brain and you know, coming up with something cool.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with it, and it's become an Amazon bestseller in the US, the UK, a couple of other countries. And you know, I've done a little publicity, and a few people bought it. You know, it started going up the charts, and then I think probably what must have happened, because it started appearing in the hot news releases charts, and it got quite, especially in the UK, got quite high up.
Yeah.
And I think that's when people start scrolling. You can start scrolling down, it becomes visible.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think the cover was doing a bit of work for me there.
Oh yeah,
because no one's ever heard of me as an author, so you know, the cover's got to sell a bit here.
Yeah, that's true. There's so many little things you got to worry about when you're trying to get your book out there at first, right? So you're doing things right so far, I would say. All right, so let's go back to the story for a minute. So this is your first book. Is this going to be a series? Do you plan more books in this world with this character, or do you have other ideas that you want to explore, or stories you want to tell?
It ends at a place that I like to think, you know, my editor at the publisher said it reminded her of the ending of Silence of the Lambs. You know, it's very open-ended, ends in a slightly, it ends in a dark place that's quite open-ended. You know, things can happen in either direction. But I just love the ending. You know, Hannibal Lecter goes off and, you know, he walks free, you know, and he says he's going to have an old friend for dinner. Yeah. They didn't need to bring out Hannibal after that, you know. That ending is so perfect. So I don't, you know, I because precisely because it was ambiguous. And I quite like that, you know. And so although I know exactly what could happen after it with this character, I'm kind of loath to write a sequel to it. I just want to leave it where it is. I do have other ideas, and I'm going to return to speculative fiction again. I think that is the thing that. It's where my heart is, you know. It might not necessarily be. It won't be a murder mystery. The next novel, I think I'm going to do. I'm toying with the idea of doing something a bit more dystopian, going further into the future.
Nice. Okay.
But again, you know, the common thread running through it is where's technology taking us, and where are the guardrails? And I think a lot of what I write will focus on that. The main problem for me at the moment is I've just had a second child, and I'm struggling to find the time to write
that's hard.
So I'll get there eventually. But what I've pledged, I always pledge, is I'll finish the second novel before George R.R. Martin finishes the Winds of Winter. That gives me a bit of time, doesn't it?
You've got a little bit of time, yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, you know, I haven't read the book yet. I'm pumped to, but it's an awesome idea. And you are a very charismatic, fun person. So I can only imagine how awesome your writing is. And I have a feeling that people are going to want you to write a sequel after they read the book. So we'll see if you're going to be able to stay away from it or not, because it just sounds incredible, man. But I'm excited that you have some other plans, you know, dystopian. We all love that, especially the further into the future you go, and being able to just experiment with all sorts of cool stuff. Like, that's pretty awesome. I'm excited for you. And congrats on your second child. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Eddie, he's called. So it's funny, having a second child has made it really, really difficult to find time to write. But actually, the reason Freebourne exists is because of my first child, Alexander. And you know, I after writing like 3 novels that never went anywhere, and I had ideas for other things that I wanted to do, you know, and then you get busy with work, and then you kind of think, am I going to sit down and write this novel? Even though when the idea had come to me, I thought, am I going to sit down and actually find the time? It's remarkable how having a kid just makes you prioritize your time much more, because you don't have any more. And then he was getting me up at like 5:30 a.m. every day. He'd sit there with his milk, and he could hold his milk by this point, but he'd take his time over it. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I cracked open the laptop and I started writing, and it actually, you know, to be honest, because I've been sitting there jotting down notes for so long before actually sitting down and committing to it, it all came out in about 3 months after that.
Oh, wow.
Just these constant mornings of getting up and watching my son drink his milk, and then think I'm going to have to occupy myself a bit better than this.
Oh, that's pretty awesome, man. That's like super dad material right there. Writing a book and taking care of the baby. That's pretty good stuff. So how much older is your oldest child than your one that you just had?
So 2.5 years older. So,
wow, okay.
So I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 6-month-old-ish coming up. You know.
Oh man.
It's
you're in it. You're in the thick of it.
Right in it.
But it's a fun ride for sure, though. You know, even if it is, and you're not outnumbered yet, at least. So at least there's one of you can take each one if you have to. So that's good.
Right. That's right.
But one of you doesn't have the free time when the other is helping with the one. So that is also true, like you said. You don't have as much time when you have that second baby.
Yeah, my wife Anna, she's trying to write a novel at the moment as well.
Oh,
so
nice.
so it's full on. We're sort of trying to steal away a tiny bit of free time so we can go and write, and then you know, switching over. But yeah.
That is really cool. That's fun that you guys are both writing, and obviously then you both like to read. So that's got to be pretty cool to have that in common. That's really nice. And plus you understand each other, being a busy family. Like she's not someone who's not into books at all, where she's like, oh, he doesn't need time to do this. But you both get it. You both are chasing that same dream. So you want to help each other. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. I think that's cool. All right. So let's pivot again. I got some questions for you about your writing process that I always love to pick the brain of authors. And then after that, we're going to go into kind of your journey to become an author. And you have lived a very interesting life, my friend. You've had some pretty awesome careers and things that you've done through those careers. So I can't wait to talk to you about that. But first, my first question for an author, there's kind of the spectrum where on one side you have what they call a pantser, who just sits down and just writes the story from their brain, you know, doesn't outline or plot anything out. And then on the other side, you have the plotter, who outlines everything. They literally have a book of outlines for their book. They don't stray from it no matter what. Where would you say you fall in there? Are you lean towards one side or the other, or are you right in the middle? Did it change as you were writing the book? Where do you fall for that?
So I would say I'm probably about 2/3 towards the heavily plotting side.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think with a murder mystery, you kind of have, and this is the first time I've ever tried to write a murder mystery.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I didn't actually set out to write a murder mystery. I set out to write a philosophical, literary, speculative thriller. But it took on the conventions of murder mystery. And when you take on the conventions of murder mystery, you have to do it right. You know, just like all the greats did. You know, Agatha Christie down. You have to have, you know, all these different suspects, red herrings, plot twists, sleights of hand. All of that needs to be plotted out very meticulously. I don't think you can really mess around with a murder mystery. But but I do like to be surprised, you know, when I write, and where things surprise me sometimes are in the characters and their development and what happens to them, how it changes their personalities as you go. And you know, and I always try to, you know, think of myself as an actor as I'm writing a character, and I'll speak their lines out as I write them. And sometimes you get to a point where you think, actually, everything I've put the character through in the course of this novel, I don't actually think the way I thought they were going to react. Now I've got to that point, I don't actually think they would react that way anymore. And sometimes that actually just changes the course of the direction of their story, not necessarily changing the overarching beginning to end point, but things in the middle do surprise you. And I find that actually I love that. I love being surprised by my own characters who take on a bit of a life of their own. And you know, that's part of the joy of writing, really, because you're almost reacting like the reader would react as well. And go, and you know, because when you're reading a novel, you think you often think to yourself where you think this is going to go. And sometimes when you're writing a novel, you're also thinking that too. And that's the joy of the surprise. But I did plot out a lot of Freebourne before I began. Well, actually, I knew the beginning, I knew this opening scene where he discovers the body and it upends his attempt to find a new life. And I knew the twist. I knew exactly how it was going to end. I always had, that was the very first thing. In fact, I woke up one morning thinking about the twist and thought, that's so cool. And I hope everyone else who reads it thinks it's too. But for me, I found it cool. I really wanted to write it. But I didn't know everything that was going to happen in the middle at that point. So I wrote the first chapter and then did nothing for about a year, you know, apart from nothing like, you know, I didn't write for a year, but I would be on the bus or, you know, cleaning my teeth and I'd have an idea and I'd just immediately jot it down.
Yeah.
And then I had so many notes, you know, and then by that point I could plot from beginning to end. And then we get to the point where, you know, my son's getting me up at 5:30 in the morning. And then that's when I translated all those notes into a fully formed novel in the course of 3 months. But I wouldn't have been able to write it in 3 months if I hadn't spent a whole year jotting down notes.
Right. And I think I've talked to a lot of authors, and I feel like that's kind of the sweet spot where you can do both, because then you know where the story's going, you know the points you want to hit. But then you also, like you said, you allow for it to change depending on the characters as they grow, as the story grows. Because sometimes, you know, I don't know for you, but I've read books where you can tell that they kind of forced whatever they originally thought was going to happen. You could kind of feel like you're reading it and you think, I don't think the character would do that. You know what I mean?
I hate it when that happens. The other thing I hate that happens is the complete opposite, which I would call the J.J. Abrams effect. Like you start something and you don't know how you're going to finish it, and you just make it up as you go along. The beginning of everything that J.J. Abrams has done is brilliant. Yeah. The end is absolutely terrible every time, every single time. And in fact, it's fooled me. I loved Lost. I loved Lost. I loved that first Star Trek. You know, I loved that first Star Wars that he did. Yeah. And then he couldn't stick the landing because his mystery box just makes it up as he goes along. Like,
you're so right. Yeah.
So I'm never going to trust him again now. I thought he was great, but I can't trust him after that.
That's so true. You're so right. That's a perfect example of having a great idea, and it being good, but then not having no idea where you're really going, and he's just kind of quick, like, oh, let's just do this. Yeah, that's so true. All right, so next question: how did you decide on kind of the writing style for this story, like third person, first person, single POV, multi POV? How did you decide all of that? Was it something that came to you as you were planning and started writing, or was it like when you thought of the story right away, you knew kind of what you wanted to do?
So I think I chose third person, and I chose third person for a very specific reason, because all the novels that are first person, you know that character is going to survive to the end.
Yes.
You know, and that kind of ruins it for you. Yeah, they've got to be there at the end telling the story. And I'm not going to tell you whether our protagonist Harry Colson survives or not. This isn't me giving anything away. But I didn't want you to assume that he does, because some pretty nasty stuff happens along the way. So, pretty dangerous stuff happens. Yeah, you know, he fears for his life several times throughout the novel. But if it'd been written from the first person, you would know he would get out of that situation.
Right, you don't worry as much. Yeah,
I
love that.
So I knew that I wasn't going to do first person, and I knew in a way I love multi-character novels. Absolutely, really love them. But I knew I had to zero in on this one character because he's coming to a new town that he's never been to before to start a new life. So you're seeing that town, all these new experiences. Through his eyes, and it becomes very claustrophobic, because pretty much everyone in the town suspects him of murder as soon as he steps off the train. So sticking into his head, you know, allows you to experience this sort of very claustrophobic feeling as you go through. Also, I think, you know, if you skipped into too many characters' heads, at some point one of them will go, and that's when I murdered this person. So you couldn't really do that. So I kind of felt the conventions of the genre. And me not wanting to give too much away meant I had to stick in one person's head, but make sure that it wasn't them telling the story.
Yep, that's brilliant, and I agree 100%. Like there's so many horror or fantasy or fiction books that are first person, and there is a lot of things they go through, but you're always like, all right, I know they make it to the end, so you're not quite like as nervous. But when it's third person, you totally are. You're right, and I think that fits perfectly for this story. So I think that was a good choice. All right, next question: you talked to us a little bit about how writing this book went for you with your newborn that you had at the time. But were you somebody that, as you were working on it, or as you're working on future projects, do you set weekly, daily, monthly goals? Like, I want to hit this many words in this amount of time to make sure I'm done by this time? Or because you're busy and you have kids, are you just someone who's like, I'm going to write as much as I can every day. If I can't write this day, it's okay. I'll write that day and I know I'll get it done. Like, how do you handle like making sure you get done everything in the time you want to get done?
I'm far more chaotic than that. I try to, if it's flowing well,
Mm-hmm.
I could write 1,000 words probably in a day.
Mm-hmm.
If it's flowing badly,
Yeah.
I'd probably get 100 done. The way I write is I have to be sure of every word and I have to be sure of every sentence. And if I'm not happy with that sentence, I go back and rewrite it. Then I get to the end of the paragraph. And if I'm not happy with that paragraph, I go back and rewrite it. Same with the page, same with the chapter, which actually meant when I got to the end of the novel, I had to do far less editing because I'd been very meticulous as I went. And if things are flowing and if everything's slotting into place, I can just churn through that quite quickly. But if it's not, if the ideas aren't flowing, it takes bloody ages. And I think, I would never want to set myself a target of I must get to this number of words because, I think that becomes a false economy. Essentially, you might be writing for the sake of it, but then you'd end up deleting far more words than that. And, and I think, going also, but I do try when I am writing, full time. And I'm not writing my second novel full time yet because I'm still plotting it out. When I am writing properly in the thick of writing, I do try to write every day. I might, if I go out and go out to the pub and get pissed, I'm not going to write, But if apart from that, I plan to write every day. And one of my, the author that I mentioned earlier, Jill Patton Walsh, she said, I asked her the same question you asked me. And she said she has to write every day. She says even if she only manages 50 words, she has to write every day because otherwise it hardens like a cheese and it becomes so much harder to go back to it because you're then more distanced from where everything was.
Right.
If you chip away at every day, it flows better. And I do think that's true.
Yeah. And it becomes a habit, right? It becomes ingrained. Like every day I write, even if it's not a lot, if it's not happening. But okay, very cool. I like that answer. On the flip side, same kind of area to think of. When you are writing, are you a creature of habit? Like, do you prefer writing morning versus night, or do you like to write like where you're at right now in your office, or do you just have a different place you like to write? Do you like to go places and write? How are you with that kind of stuff? When you're writing, do you have certain things and times of day that you prefer to write?
Yeah, this is my study. It's my preferred place to write. And I tend to write best in environments that I'm comfortable in. So I don't like writing in a noisy cafe or even a quiet cafe. I've got to get up and pace around and look out the window and fiddle the bookshelves and make a cup of tea and do everything apart from write. For quite, I have to do a lot of that before sitting down and writing. Or I'm not going to sit at my desk and just
go.
That 1,000 words. There's a lot of cups of tea. In that time that I've done those 1,000 words, and I'm not gonna end up doing that in even the nicest of cafes. I mean, many people can. I just don't. Morning was when I was doing those 5:30 a.m. shifts. That was when I was writing a lot of Freebourne, but I was also writing a lot of it at night as well because that's after the kids are in bed. And I do burn the midnight oil. I kind of think that I've got that what they call the Thatcher gene, which is you can survive on 4 hours sleep a night, and I do. I don't like it, but I can do it. And then, I'll have 4 coffees in the morning as well. But I'll sleep when I'm dead, and I might die sooner than others because I'll have burnt up all my life force before then. But early mornings, late nights, they're the best. In the middle of the day, it's too much going on, too much distractions, work, kids, everything else. So early morning, late night in the privacy of my own study.
That's awesome. Okay, very cool. Next question. I always find it interesting to ask this one because nowadays with the internet, it makes research just right there at your fingertips. But a lot of people still research in the old ways too. So for you with your book, what are some of the ways you research? Did you just Google everything, or were there experts kind of in your life that you've come across in some of these areas? Did you look in physical books and do some research? How did you do most of your research for this book?
No, very good question. It was a mixture of many different things. So, in terms of the setting, I grew up in a small town, rural environment. I live in London now, but I get what those kind of places are like, and a lot of that was born from. There's no character that's based on a real person. There's no location that's based on a real location. But that vibe, that comes from living in one of those places. The future tech comes from researching where we're going, looking at where we are now, and sort of speculating forwards. But with speculative fiction, it is speculative. You get the chance to dream a little bit, so you don't have to be you don't have to be entirely accurate. But there are things that I did have to be very accurate about. For example, there's in the opening chapter, after Harry Colson has discovered the body of a murdered woman lying in the snow, he calls the police. He does the right thing. He's a good man. He does the right thing. He calls the police. And they take him down to the station and interview him as a witness. But he's the only witness on the scene at the time. No one else is known to be in the area, and his is the only DNA on the body. So they immediately suspect him. He's not been arrested at this point, but they immediately suspect him.
Right.
And I had to read a police training manual, which is pretty. It's not a page turner, I have to say. But I read a whole police training manual on how they would deal with that kind of situation.
That's awesome.
So I'd like to think the dialogue is relatively reflective of what the police would actually be doing in that situation. At least the British police, anyway. I don't know. I don't know what the American police would be doing. Although I've watched plenty of American police procedures, but you'd read it and you'd go, yeah, I kind of feel like that's what the police would do in that situation.
Yeah,
and then we obviously it is a murder mystery. There is a killer. I wanted to understand the mind of a killer. I wanted to understand where psychopathy comes from. Is it something that is innate to us? So are we born with it, or is it based on our experiences, and often traumatic experiences? So one of my friends is a consultant psychiatrist, and I picked his brains on that, and he's got a little mention in there. In fact, it says, "Thank you to Dr. Tim Siegel, consultant psychiatrist, for teaching me to understand the mind of a killer." And I just left that open just in case people thought that maybe he was a psychopathic killer.
That's awesome.
I decided to rig my friend in the acknowledgement.
Oh yeah, you got to do that.
He was very helpful.
That's really cool. I love that you have that mix, and I think that's so. Now I can't wait to get to the part where the police are talking to him to see like how that sounds, because I think that's awesome that you read a police procedure manual. That's really cool. That's awesome, dude. And that's so great that you have people in your real life, especially like that you can bounce things off of and stuff. That just makes it gives your book, I'm sure, a little more authenticity too, and makes it feel more real instead of you just Googling something or thinking of what you've seen on TV. Like you said, like you really dove in and found a way to get like as real of material as you can. And I think that's awesome.
Well, that's the thing. That's the key, I think, to writing sci-fi, writing speculative fiction. It's about that willing suspension of disbelief, because there is mind-bending technology in there, and you know that from the beginning, because he is Dr. Harry Colson is a mind tech entrepreneur. We learn what he's there to do, and you've got to believe that could happen. And you're not going to believe that could happen if you don't believe all the normal things that happen.
Right?
The plausibility of this town, the plausibility of the scene he comes upon, tragic as it is, it needs to feel real. The police, he, in fact, actually, soon after discovering the body, Harry starts suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and is taken to hospital. All that needs to feel real. Otherwise, you're not going to buy into the weird stuff that happens.
Yep. That's so true. I love when books, especially ones that have a little bit more of the weird stuff, when they put in real life stuff, it just gives it that gritty, real feel and makes it feel alive. So I think that was a very smart choice to do that. All right, last question in this area. And I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to ask anyway. When you're writing, people enjoy all sorts of different things in the background. Are you someone that needs it always to be completely quiet? Do you listen to music? Does it need to be lyrical versus non-lyrical? How do you like your atmosphere to be when you're writing?
Well, at the moment, my writing atmosphere usually has the backing track of Screaming Baby. But
you probably have kids in the background.
Yeah. But normally I do prefer silence. You know, I write from my desk. You know, I write journalism. I work in politics as well. I write a lot, even when I'm not writing novels. And for that I need complete silence. For Freebourne, I mean, there's a bit of a soundtrack to Freebourne. I mean, Harry Colson is a man who's stuck in the past. This is set in the future, but he's this kind of nerdy character, you know, a bit like me, who, you know, loves Dungeons and Dragons, loves Star Trek. All of this comes through in his character, and he's into the same kind of indie guitar bands that, you know, people are into now, because he's just constantly, you know, he's very much, his tastes haven't changed since he was a kid. So there are all sorts of songs that are mentioned, albums that are mentioned, very much indie. You know, it could be now, it could be going back to some of my favorite music, which is Manic Street Preachers and New Order. You know, Harry's into all that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
And yeah, I'm gonna whack on the Manics on New Order while I'm writing, absolutely, because you know, if he's listening to it while I'm writing that bit, it makes sense to do that. Otherwise, you know, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably be writing in silence.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your journey to becoming an author. So there's a couple sides to this that I want you to just walk us through. So take us back to when you were young and just talk about kind of what got you into reading and got you into the science fiction and stuff like that. But then also walk us through your adult life and some of your careers, like being a journalist, being a politician. Pretty awesome stuff. And I've read through some of the cool things that you've done, and talk about a little bit about that and how it influenced your writing and this journey. But just walk us through that. I know that's a lot to walk us through, but I'm just excited to hear about your journey.
So I'll walk you back to 1948, which is a bit before I was young, if you can believe that. So my grandmother, who I never met, she sadly passed away before I was born. Mumtaz Shaheen, she's called, and she was a very well-known fiction writer and literary critic in the Indian subcontinent. First of all in Mysore in the south of India, and then the family fled, including my father, fled north to Pakistan shortly after partition. In fact, it was the very day that Gandhi was assassinated, and you know, India was just erupted into violence at that time, and you know, people were boarding the train with guns, and people were getting killed on both sides, on all sides. So they basically smuggled themselves under the seats of a train to avoid getting shot, as they made the 1,000-mile journey north to the very newborn nation of Pakistan at that time, where my grandmother became a literary figure there. She became a pioneer of Urdu literary fiction and criticism, and I think very much wanted to be sort of a part of that building of a new nation, essentially. Now, I never met her, but you know, all of that love of stories, of words, was passed on to my father. And when he was 20, he moved to the UK, where he met my mum, settled down here, became an English teacher. And my love of of words, of stories, of fiction, it can only go back to, you know, remembering, you know, when I was 6 years old and he's reading Lord of the Rings to me, or reading Shakespeare to me, which is just instilled in me this passion for words and what we can do with them. So ever since then, I was writing. You know, I probably couldn't spell, and my handwriting certainly wasn't legible, but I was trying to write stuff that you know, I enjoyed. In fact, I think I ripped off Lord of the Rings at least a couple of times in early stuff.
We all do when we're young.
Yeah. And then, you know, I went to university. I got very political at the same time, and you know, it was around the time, I think I was about 16, before university, that the Iraq War broke out, and I was on the streets protesting against the war. And I sort of became more and more political, quite environmentalist as well. And I just wanted to use my writing to try and do something. So I became a journalist and started doing exposés on tax avoidance, wrote about current affairs, trying to use whatever mediums I could to make a difference, you know. And it's very, very difficult to do that, of course. You know, it's a big world out there, and there's some very, very intractable problems. So, you know, after a while, realizing that I wasn't wasn't going to solve climate change or bring in world peace by writing. I thought, well, I'm going to try and do what I can. And, you know, although one should think global, one needs to act local. So I got involved in local politics in West London, where I live. Got elected as a councillor, got promoted onto the cabinet of that council. So I'm running a borough of West London with a group of other people, where my sort of specialist area, my portfolio, is in green spaces. And culture and a few other things. But a lot of what I've been doing is working to transform green spaces. I launched a project called Grow for the Future, which is the UK's first ever policy to transform wasteland into community gardens and allotments and pair them with schools in deprived areas. So these kids who never knew where a carrot came from, apart from, Sainsbury's would call it here, it'd be Walmart over there, or where a carrot came from. You know, they can learn to grow their own carrot and learn about sustainability and biodiversity and healthy living, all the things I took for granted growing up in the countryside.
Right. Yeah.
That urban kids in deprived areas of London don't have. So how could I give that to them? And I gave it to them by taking land and transforming it to things that they could plant. And that was one of the ways I sort of thought, well, I'm not going to be able to stop climate change, but maybe I can sort of transform our local environment. And I ran another campaign where I ended up fighting one of the UK's richest landowners, the Duke of Northumberland, to save what was only a very small site. It was 3 acres of green space, but it's a site loved by my constituents who had worked it as allotments for a century, essentially, since the first fed wounded soldiers coming back from World War One. And it was like a 5-year battle to save those allotments, and it blew up into the national press. It became this David versus Goliath fight.
Wow.
The journalists on all the papers are calling it the peasants' revolt against the Duke. And you don't have dukes where you are.
No.
You know? Much as your president wants to be a king right now, you don't have aristocracy. But you know, the history of the British aristocracy is essentially they came over with William the Conqueror in 1066. Pointed at a piece of land, said that's mine, and they had a really big stick so no one else could have it, and it's been in their family ever since. So that's what you're up against essentially when you're and despite that, you know, we managed to win that fight. And you know, again, you're not going to change the world doing that, but you know, it became what I became very passionate about doing it. And you know, and that sort of because I'd been a writer, because I'd been a journalist, I knew a lot of journalists who I could go to and try and expose the wrongdoing that was happening, and that just sort of all coalesced together essentially.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, first of all, like, kudos for the projects and everything you're doing locally. Like, I think that's so cool. You know, my day job, when I'm not doing this and writing and stuff, is a teacher. So I work with youth too. And I just think that's incredible, man, that you are doing that. You're making a huge difference. You know, even if just one of those kids, you change their trajectory, you know, it's worth it. But you're doing that for a lot more than just one kid. So I think that's really cool, first of all. And second, like, heck yeah, way to take on somebody like that and save that space for that community. That's just incredible, dude. Like, as a side note, like, I just want to say, keep doing what you're doing, like doing interviews and talking to people, because I already wanted to read your book because it's so cool sounding. And then just hearing you talk about your book makes me want to read it, because you're just a cool, nerdy guy like the rest of us. But then hearing all these awesome things that you've done, like, it's inspiring, and it's going to make people want to read your book, because I talk to authors about that a lot, especially new authors or indie authors that are trying to get their names out there. A lot of times they don't want to do interviews. They don't want to put themselves out there. But a lot of times people, you know, you can have a really cool book, you can have a beautiful book, and people might get it. But when people get to know you, like, a lot of times they want to buy it just because you're awesome. And that's going to happen for you, my friend. So as a side note, this is awesome. But that's so cool. So at what point did you decide, because with that awesome life that you've lived and all these cool things that you've done, you know, a lot of times people in that situation would write a book that's, you know, nonfiction or something in that area or something with all that, or maybe more literary fiction that talks about some of the things they've done. But you decided to go into the nerdy area and write this really fun, cool book. But still has some real world stuff in it. But so two things, I guess. How did you decide I mean, we talked earlier, it's some inspiration, things that you love. But how did you decide to go from doing all this stuff in the real world to thinking, I kind of want to write this really cool out there book? And then at what point did you decide to start? Like, I think I want to write a book. Talk us through that a little bit.
Well, I guess in some ways I probably should have written a non-fiction book. They sell much better than fiction. It's much harder, much harder to market fiction. Because if you're a non-fiction writer, let's say I wanted, I've gained quite a bit of expertise in allotments. It's a niche area, but niches are things that sell because people, there are other people out there who are interested in that niche, and if you become the foremost expert in that niche, then people are you've got an inbuilt audience. There are millions of fiction books out there. Hundreds of thousands of murder mystery books. Maybe far fewer of those are sci-fi murder mysteries. But still, there's a lot out there. It's a very, very crowded field. But I just love fiction. It's my first love. Everything I've ever done, journalism, politics, activism, everything. I always keep coming back to. I want to write stories, and I want to tell stories, and I want to entertain people. But I want to make people think as well, and that's the essence of Freebourne. Is it's as I say, it's a philosophical thriller. It's written to be a page turner, but it's also written so that when that last page is turned, hopefully you are still thinking about it for quite a long time afterwards, and you're still asking those questions that it's come up with, and it's that idea of, and it goes back to these ideas, that perhaps naive ideas of a young activist that once was, of trying to make a difference somehow to the world. Well, how can you convey these ideas? Well, as I said before, you smuggle them into something people are going to read. So you do it in a murder mystery, and that's what I did.
That's awesome. All right, very cool, man. Well, we're coming up on an hour already. I feel like this has flown by. And as a dad, you'll understand this. My kids are a little older, so I have to wrap it up soon here to go to a soccer game for one of them. You know how that goes. I guess your oldest is probably not old enough to start any kind of sports stuff. Do they do anything that young? At like, I'd say probably more like 5 or 6 they start.
No, not yet. We've got all of that to come, and
all the busyness to come. But it'll be less busy in other ways, So there's always, it's always busy in different ways. But thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. I'm really excited to check out your book. I cannot wait to do so. And this podcast is called Beast Friends Forever, as a play on the Bearded Book Beast and all that, but also because that's what we are now, man. Beast Friends Forever. So anytime you have a new book coming out, I would love to have you back on. Or anytime you want to come on and talk about anything, just reach out. And also, once I finish the book, I think because of the twist and the cool parts of the story, I think it'd be really fun to have you back on and do like a spoilery chat, especially once it's out a little bit, so that we don't spoil it for everybody. But I think that would be fun to talk to you about it, because I feel like I'm going to need to talk to you about it after I'm done. So yeah, I just really appreciate you, and I'm excited to be along on this journey with you for this book and whatever comes out in the future. So thank you for your time, and congrats on the book and the new baby, and just life is good.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and I look forward to speaking again.
Heck yeah. All right. So everybody in the chat, thank you guys for being here. You guys were fantastic as always. Thank you for watching on replay. Reminder in the description, Salman's website and books are all linked there, as well as Roundfire Books. So check all of that out. And I'll be back on Monday. So keep an eye on social media and YouTube for links and info for when I'll be back. But Salman, before we go, is there anything that you wanted to share, shout out, or talk about one more time?
I think you covered absolutely everything. So just to say thank you for having me again. I hope your readers check out Freebourne. It is available for pre-order now, and
one more time.
I look forward to hearing what you make of the twist.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait. All right. Well, have a good day, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. And until I do, as I always say, devour your TBRs, be brave, be beautiful to one another, and be beastly. We'll see everyone.